Hi everyone! Sometimes in order to understand what kind of a person someone really is, you need to test them in non-standard situations, which often reveal the true face of many people. If rich people sometimes acted like the character of our story, one could very quickly understand how sincere the people around them are. A resident of a Spanish city, Don Montero was a very wealthy man and owned a group of restaurants throughout his city, both in the center and on the outskirts. Once, the man was examined by a doctor and he was told that he was seriously ill, cancer of a very advanced stage. Pain in his liver had long been his constant companion, but the businessman did not have enough time to go to the doctor. Now the terrible diagnosis left him no chance. And then the man decided that in his last months, he would improve the lives of those people who would be worthy of it. Don Montero came up with an interesting plan. He put on beggar's clothes and set the goal of going around to all of his restaurants to check how kind and humane his employees were. What awaited him made the respectable man cry. The most famous restaurant in Spain was the first on his way. Before the beggar had time to approach the threshold, the angry manager jumped on him. "Get out of here immediately!" he shouted angrily at the elderly man. "But I am very hungry and I just want to eat," Don Montero replied calmly. "Go wash yourself first and dress properly," the manager hissed contemptuously, "and only then can you stand outside the door and see how our visitors eat. People of your circle do not belong here." Don Montero stopped in amazement. He devoted a lot of time and effort to the development of his restaurants and tried to make them democratic, acceptable to people of any status and income. The owner had always insisted that the employees treat all visitors with respect, whether they were rich or poor. The disguised beggar was in no hurry to leave the institution. Deep inside, he believed that at least one of the staff would show at least a little bit of attention for the beggar. But then it was even more terrible. The chef rushed out and in a raised voice ordered the elderly man to go to the back. "I have just thrown the waste out there," he added viciously and chuckled. "I am sure you have never tasted such great food before." And then a guard approached the elderly man and sent the poor man away. Don Montero did not immediately come to his senses. He just refused to believe his eyes and ears. With a heavy heart, the owner headed to the chic city park to his next restaurant. But even at the entrance, a waitress jumped on him and blocked the way inside. She immediately called the manager and indignantly showed him what an unsightly character showed up to their elite establishment. "Get out of here," the manager said to the beggar. "We will not sell you anything here." Then the beggar said that he used to come in to dine at this restaurant all the time and communicated well with its owner. But now his business had failed and the bank had taken away everything he had. "If you tell the owner about me, he will know exactly who I am," Montero said. What the man heard in response shocked him immensely. "I am the owner of this restaurant," the manager declared haughtily, "and you get out of here now." The second unsuccessful attempt to dine under the guise of a vagabond terribly upset Don Montero. He thought in horror, "Is it possible that all of my employees treat poor people like this?" The man just could not believe it. The restaurant owner walked around the city in despair and wondered why the staff treated those in need of help this way. What did he overlook while running the business? What is the reason for such hatred from his employees toward disadvantaged people? With these sad thoughts, he discreetly walked into the third restaurant, the oldest of all. His partner named Rocio had the position of chief assistant there. Montero considered him a reliable person and trusted him as he trusted himself. Together, they developed a group of restaurants since the moment they opened the very first establishment. The restaurant was full of visitors. The beggar quietly went to the counter where Rocio worked. "Please give me some food," the beggar said quietly. "I have not eaten anything for so long." The assistant looked him over. The owner was afraid that he recognized him, but it was not so. "Sorry, senor, but this is not a free canteen for beggars," Rocio said sharply. "You will have to leave before I call the guard." "Please give me at least one piece of bread," the disguised Montero pleaded. "Why am I banished from everywhere like an outcast?" "How else would you be treated looking at your outfit?" the manager said. "A decent clientele comes to us, not street beggars." "Shame on you," Don Montero exclaimed. "You do not know anything about me. I was also a rich businessman, but I had a misfortune and I lost everything. I see you are a kind person. You will not refuse to help a poor vagrant." The manager approached the elderly man and said, "I spent half my life getting these restaurants to flourish. Our crazy owner is fixated on helping the poor, and it is only thanks to me that our business has not failed. And now he is terribly ill. There is very little time left, and then I will own all this splendor. No one else will give you such clever advice, vagrant. Looking for food in restaurants is not a good idea, and leave here as soon as possible." Don Montero came out of his restaurant in shock. His heart was pounding, his ears did not want to believe what he heard, and tears rolled down his face. And the worst thing was that he sincerely trusted his manager, Rocio, considering him a true friend. Moving away from the shock, the owner decided to finish what he had begun and see what would happen in the other restaurants. Unfortunately, he saw the same outcome over and over again. The last restaurant was located on the outskirts of the city in the middle of a green alley where white swans were swimming in a picturesque pond. This place was so beautiful that people willingly walked there. There was no empty seats in the restaurant either. The disguised beggar entered it dejectedly, already hoping for nothing. At the entrance, a guard immediately approached the beggar and asked what he wanted in the restaurant. "I am very hungry," Montero began his story. "I beg you, give me at least a piece of bread." The guard called the manager and asked him to come to the door. The owner was ready to hear the familiar offensive dialogue, but the manager's words startled him. "What can I do for you?" he asked politely. Montero repeated for the umpteenth time that day that he was sick and hungry, but that he was not allowed anywhere and was put out like a stray dog. The manager clearly felt sorry for the poor man. "Let's wait for someone to clear a table and I will give you some food," he said in a kind voice. Don Montero waited at the entrance for an hour and a half. When he figured that he was also not allowed in, only in a more cunning way to avoid scandal, he slowly walked away. But the manager caught up with him and invited him in, since the food for the beggar was ready. Going inside, the owner could not believe his eyes. In the very corner, a generous table was set with many different dishes. The manager helped the poor man sit down and offered him food. Meanwhile, the manager, his name was Mateo, said that he had only been working in this restaurant for a year. "Quite recently, I was a prosperous businessman," he told the stranger. "But one day, my wife and I had an accident and we were left without anything. The last of our money was spent on the treatment for my wife, but she still died. I was in despair. I started drinking heavily and squandered all my money. I wandered the streets looking for food, and once I came to this restaurant. The owner gave me a job, and thanks to his kindness, I was able to start a normal life again." Then Don Montero also remembered this story with Mateo. "Once they helped me here, and now I can help," he said. "Come back in 2 days and I will try to give you a job here." That night, Montero did not sleep at all, and in the morning he invited the staff of all of his establishments to the same restaurant. On purpose, he came a little later, and again in the form of a beggar. Seeing the annoying vagrant, everyone began to resent him. Only the employees of the last restaurant were not angry, but simply slowly took the elderly man into the kitchen. Then the owner dialed the number of the manager and told him to meet him at the door. When he was alone in the kitchen, he washed his made-up face but did not change his clothes. The appearance of Montero made a splash. No one could utter a word, but he spoke loudly and clearly. "From this day on, all managers are fired except for Mateo. My restaurant should not have violent, rude, or callous employees. I will appoint as managers everyone who now work in Mateo's establishment, and a little later each one of them will become heir to all my restaurants. I never had my own family, and the closest people for me were my colleagues. For those who have now lost their jobs, I wish you good luck and kindness." The owner did not know how much time he would live because of his disease, but he firmly decided to spend the rest of his life with kind and sensitive people, the employees of Mateo's restaurant. It's not so scary to make a mistake. It is scary not to realize it and continue to go through life with a heavy heart. Fate much more often favors those people who have a good soul and know how to help others. Friends, do good deeds more often. Kindness is what the deaf can hear and the blind can see. That is all for today. All the best to you. Until next time.